to Panic Button Podcast, where we talk about mental health, how we get through it, why we get through it, all the fun things that we decide to do. And today has definitely been like a long day. I don't know if anybody has felt that this previous week, that it's just felt long. I know you guys love when we talk about the weather, but it's been rainy. And like, it's just crazy how weather really does affect your mental health and your mood. And I'm trying to remind myself that spring is coming, the sun is coming. We've already had nice days, but then it's just like my basement flooded and the rain is just terrible. And I'm like, I just want to go to bed. I could just sleep and relax all day. But, doing a mental health check-in for myself, things are doing pretty well. I've had a lot of life things come up lately. And I know sometimes with anxiety, when a lot of things happen at once, we tend to get very overwhelmed, very overstimulated. And I've really tried to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, staying hydrated, eating good foods, all those things that they say that help to get you through those stressful times when you do have some life changes or life throws at you, like a basement flooding or something else. So really just trying to stay optimistic and stay on my path. And honestly, just taking care of myself. That's what we need to do day in and day out, is continue to put ourselves first and make sure we are making a priority for our mental health and just time for us in general. But yeah, I do have a special guest joining me today. Her name is Leah Nash, and she is a mother of three. She's a mental health advocate, suicide attempt survivor, and author of the memoir Chasing Normal, Finding Hope, A Decade of Living with Mental Illness. So super excited to have her on here. Leah, are you with us?
I am. What an honor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. If it's okay, I do like to always warn people that my story does have some dark twists and turns. There's hope in the end, but there is some trauma and suicide attempts. So I just want to prepare people before we get started that there will be probably some tough topics that come up.
Yes, thank you for that disclosure and just kind of jumping right into it. What does your mental health journey look like?
Sure. So I'd love to share. Um, for the sake of time, I'll just give a brief overview of my childhood, and then most of my mental illness has been in adulthood. So I started out in a two-family home, Christian parents, Bible Belt, thought everything was great. I definitely did not understand the family genetics, which are horrible, but as a kid, you don't know these things. And so throughout elementary and middle school, I did struggle. I struggled with anorexia and some trauma and teen pregnancy. So I was a perfectionist and decided the only way to get everything together was to go like super warp speed. So I went to nursing school. By 19, I was an RN working in the hospital. And I thought I had my life together. Like I was really excited, like, we had a rough patch, but from here on out, it's going to be great. Well, not so much. Those family genetics kicked in. And within about a
We
matter of
love those.
right. And so within the matter of about a year, I lost my job. I lost my marriage. I lost my house. I lost my psychological health, and I lost my faith. It just rock bottom, everything crumbled. And I just wanted to give up on life. I was hospitalized, honestly, probably more time in the hospital than out. My family was taking care of my two kids at the time because I just was not in a mental state where I could do this. I tried tons and tons of medications, and I was diagnosed with bipolar 1, rapid cycling with psychotic features. So if you're not familiar with bipolar, there are a couple different types. Type 1 is the most severe, and rapid cycling in the DSM-5 just means that you have more than, I think it's 4 cycles per year, which I was cycling left and right all the time. And then psychotic features. A lot of people don't know that bipolar can also have hallucinations and things like that. And People typically think of that for maybe like schizophrenia, but bipolar can have it as well. So I was hospitalized, and the doctors basically were running out of options. So they decided to do ECT, the shock therapy. You see it in like the old scary movies that are in black and
Sure.
white and freak
Yeah.
out everybody. Well, it's still a thing, and they're still doing it. I try not to comment. It's great for some people. It was not for me. I ended up with
Sure.
a lot of memory loss following it. A lot, like years of memory loss. So it was time to try something else instead of that, because I just literally could not physically tolerate anymore. So I started doing a type of therapy that I absolutely love. We can talk about it more if you want, but it's called dialectical behavioral therapy. And it's a very specific type of therapy. It's not just like, so tell me about
They call
kindergarten.
that DBT, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
DBT.
Yes, yes. I have heard of it a little bit, but nothing
Yeah,
like, where I could talk about it. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to hear about
yeah.
it.
Talk about that too. So that was a game changer for me, just learning skills. Um, And so I ended up going to grad school, just everything. Somehow I always thought education can save me, but I'm not realistic about what I can actually do with the severity of my bipolar. So that's frustrating. But um, I graduated, I finished grad school, got a job, and was so overwhelmed, and the meds were not right. And I made a horrible, horrible decision to intentionally overdose. And as I was losing consciousness, the book goes into a little bit more detail, and I don't want to trigger anyone. But as I was losing consciousness, I realized what a huge mistake I had made. So I called 911, and I'm like fading. No one expected me to live. And I bargained with God. You know, we do that sometimes when things are really rough. There's the bargaining stage. And I just prayed, like, God, if you let me live, I promise I will spread the message of hope, that suicide is not the option. It is not an option. It's a permanent solution for temporary problems. Um, if I could just write a book and touch one person, it would be worth it. And I did. I made it. I was in ICU for quite a few days. I was in the hospital for a very long time. And so I've done my best to hold up that end of the deal, that there is hope. It's been 5 years since my suicide attempt, and I have a life that I love. I'm still sleepy from the meds. I still get sedated. I take naps here and there, but I have a wonderful life. My kids are great. There have been times where I've had to go cheer for them or stand up for them or take them to the doctor, or seeing my oldest graduate high school. Like, I almost missed out on all of these amazing, powerful moments of being with friends and family and being there for other people. I volunteer a few days a week. Like, just things I would have never imagined at that lowest point. So I guess that is my biggest message, is that there is hope. So that's why I came up with the title of the memoir, Chasing Normal. I never found normal, but I did find hope.
I don't think
So
any of us find
I
normal.
don't think there is a
you
normal.
know?
Yeah. If we can find hope, that's the most important part. So yeah, that's a little bit about my story.
Thank you for sharing that. It needs to be told. It's definitely a lot of people I feel like can relate to that and definitely resonate with what you've gone through if someone is currently going through the same thing or they also have. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to be able to get people of different walks of life on here to share their story and to see how at the end of the day we all can take something from this person or that person, and really it drives home. We resonate with each other more than we give each other enough credit for sometimes. So
Yes.
I do appreciate you coming on here and sharing that with us. And I guess like my biggest thing, that as you were telling your story a little bit, is so you've been on a good path now for 5 years. So
Yes.
how has this affected you being a parent, would you say? Because I know in previous conversations I've had on other episodes, I do discuss a little bit of kind of like the trials and tribulations of having a mental illness and being a parent.
Yes. That's a great question. Um, so backing up a little bit, my first two kids I didn't have a diagnosis with. So it was just my third son that I had to come off of my bipolar meds and get on one single monotherapy. And he was considered high risk during the pregnancy. So that was really hard to feel like I had put his well-being in jeopardy because of my bipolar. And then I was not able to breastfeed on the medications that I need. So, and bottle babies do great all the time. It's not the end of the world. But when you're depressed
Right.
and down and it's like, I'm a terrible mom, I can't
Oh,
breastfeed.
yeah.
I'm like, ah, I was so worried about that. But yeah, it's easier now. My youngest is 8, so I can say like, hey, go play, do whatever. Let me take a nap. I have to be very aware of not overdoing it. So keeping a sleep schedule, not much on the alcohol, those kinds of things that I maybe in the past was not aware of. And I didn't watch as closely, but there are a lot of things that I need to do to maintain my mental health so I can be there for them. And then always being med compliant. So it doesn't mean that the meds always work well or that they don't have side effects, but I always contact my doctor. My psychiatrist, I've had her for like 10 years. So if there's a side effect, like a few weeks ago, my lithium level got high. She drew labs and had to just back down just one pill less a day. But I was having tremors and like brain fog. So just things like that, that being aware of my own personal kind of mental state, being aware of that first, and then asking for help when I need to. And I think all parents do that. So I don't really think anything is
Oh,
wrong with
yeah.
that. Great. So
Right.
yeah. Does that answer your question kind of?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I just love to hear the parents that, don't let it really affect their children and their childhood. Because I
Mhm.
feel like so many times from previous, when I spoke with other folks, that it's just like our parents had these mental health issues, didn't know what they were, didn't know how to recognize them. Then they ended up inevitably having predisposed to these issues. So I think that it's good that you've been able to stay on your path and not let that really affect the main goal, of raising those children and, obviously showing them like the strength that you have to continue doing what you do, because more help is definitely accessible now than it ever was before.
Absolutely. And they're proud of me. They'll say every once in a while, like, they can tell if I start like shutting down. But they're like, we're so proud of you. My oldest had a really sweet talk with me actually just a couple weeks ago saying, I saw everything you went, he saw the most. He's like, I saw everything that you went through. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. It has made me such a more caring person. And he described someone in his class at school who had a brain injury and was never the same. But he was like, no one else was friends with him. But he was like, I've seen what you've gone through. And he was like, I'm there for him. It's made me a better person to see your struggles and to see you fight so hard.
Yeah, and that's great. Like it's, that's what we need. We need to continue to be showing these children and that it's okay. And
Yeah.
that, there's people that might look like they have it figured out or that they don't look like they have it figured out, but they still need equally the amount of compassion that we can give them.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess from like a parent perspective, because I'm also a parent, I have a son that'll be 4 in a couple of weeks.
Right.
And I like to kind of see other parents' perspective on um just opening the door to their children to normalizing conversations about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think like that you've been able to kind of bring to the table and like provide in that aspect to ensure that your kids, I'm assuming they know that that can be an open conversation with you if they ever needed to address anything themselves.
That's a great question. What I started doing, I don't even know what gave me the idea, but over the past like probably 10 years, I let the kids play hooky one day out of the school year, and we call it mental health day. So we'll go out, pick
Perfect.
a restaurant, and we talk about all the hard stuff. And it's interesting how many misconceptions or just they were young and never got the full picture, or just things like that. Like my oldest, when he was, let's see, he was probably 7th grade, and I'd had ECT like 4 years before that. And he had no idea why I had such bad memory loss. Um, and so I had to explain to him what ECT was. And he was like, "Oh, I thought it was your bipolar thing." And I was like, "No, it was actually a different thing." And then even just like going over family history, we also take time to tend to honor and remember and try to do things differently. I have quite a few family members who have died by suicide as well. So we take time to honor them, talk about the future, open conversations. I'm always here. If you have dark thoughts, if you're suicidal, do not be afraid to tell me, like, please, please, please tell me. So we have all the really hard talks, and it opens up for the rest of the year that it's, hey, I forgot to ask you, or what. So that is one thing that I try really hard to break these generational curses or genetics as much as
Right?
possible.
And
Yeah.
that's hard because I feel like, obviously they could be predisposed to anything, So I feel like us as parents giving them the tools to be like, hey, like, I might not have known that these things might occur, but like I could tell you and not like warn you, but it's almost like guide
Yeah.
them through, like, if God forbid it were to happen, like, it's
Yeah.
okay. And this is what we'll do and we'll figure it out.
Yes.
What do you think that you do to stay on your path? And I'm sure that's pretty open ended, but I
Yeah.
like to hear how people get through and how they got through and what they're doing now. Because not everybody's in the same place in their journey with mental health.
Right. And I would probably answer this differently over the years. Sometimes I do a little bit more in the therapy and a little less on other things, like say. So I have like quote graduated therapy, but I'm sure I won't. I'll need it again at some point. This is great. So if I need something, I can reach out to her. I'm big on exercise, but not crazy hard exercise. Sometimes just getting a walk, walking the dog for 45 minutes just to get out in fresh air. I love music. I've got it playing as much as possible. I talked about med compliance is another big thing. Sleep. Um, yeah, I try to guard my schedule, and I don't put anything earlier than 10 a.m. because I'm just good for nothing and still drowsy. But sleep is super important. And then again, that relationship with my psychiatrist. And I did do a while back. This was really cool. If anybody listening has struggled with finding medications that work, I did genetic testing, and it showed that I had a DNA malformation that makes medications harder to work and to have more side effects. So um, that has played into my health and wellness because I know what options are better options to try. It gives some extra information for the doctor as she's trying to figure out what combination to stay on. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people that have talked about that before. I've personally never done it, but I feel like I'm one of the lucky people that, I mean, I'm currently on medication still for generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. And I've never, knock on wood, had any bad experiences. Like the
Good.
first time ever that I've had like anything that wasn't quote unquote good was when I was switching from Lexapro after 7 years to Zoloft this current year. Just got a little dizzy. So kind of got like dizzy spells and an upset stomach. Otherwise, I mean, unfortunately, you hear some scary stories of people with these medications.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was lucky enough to be able to make a switch, and I guess my body's like, well, you need this, so we'll help you out. I'm always like, well, we need something.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about your book and what that kind of journey looked like for you and the purpose behind it.
Another great question. I started on the book back in 2015. I did not want to write it. I don't journal. I just really don't like writing. It's not therapeutic for me. It's not fun. I can't say enough how much I don't like writing, but I just felt this prompting of, I had just lost a couple of relatives to suicide over the past few years and then some friends. And I just got this feeling of we are losing people to suicide. What can I do personally to help? Um, and so I just got out my laptop and started typing. The only thing, one minor detail was that the shock therapy really impaired my word finding ability and even down to like how to type. I used to be pretty fast and I just forgot how to type. I forgot how to organize a paper. Like I was in such bad shape. And to think that I could write a memoir was, I don't even know. I don't know. But I felt called that if my whole goal the whole time was if I can just help one person, it will all be worth it. So then I'd type some more. And then finally, and because I have such big gaps in my memory, I was like, I can't do a regular chronological book. I'm missing so much. So I wrote it kind of in like it is in kind of like a journal entry style. So there's a couple pages and then a new title, a couple pages and then a new title. And there's some laughter in there. There's some hard stuff. But I just wanted people to know kind of what you were saying earlier, that our journeys may be different, but we can all still get something out of it. I've had people email me and say, I passed it along to so and so. They really need this so bad. That's what this book is for. If we can do anything to spread the message of hope, that's how it came to be. So yeah, I had editing help because like I said, I was not in a mental headspace to write a book. So I just did it the best I could. I'm sure there's still errors in there. They're short little chapters, so they're easy to read, but were also easier for me to write than a whole, birth till now kind of deal.
Yeah, I don't I've talked to a couple of people who have written books, and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't think that I'm like, okay, I had a hard time in college writing a paper, let
Yeah.
alone, all of this. But I guess when it's your personal experience, that does look a little different. It's almost facing the reality of what you dealt with and how you overcame it.
Yes, that's what I hope. I hope that people get to the end and are like, oh my gosh, like we were cheering for her and she's good. And now we can find that same hope, even if it's just a teeny bit and it'll grow over time.
Sure. And then you were diagnosed with PTSD as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
what did that journey kind of look like for you?
um so the PTSD, I was raped at 14 and did not tell anyone. I was told by the person that if I let anyone know that and they had a gun and they said that they will come kill me and my family. So as a 14-year-old, I thought that was the thing to do. So to protect my family, I didn't tell anybody for years. So I was not able to get the therapy that I needed for it. My parents would have in a heartbeat stood up for me and taken me and done anything I needed to do, but they didn't know. I just wasn't honest with anybody, except for my one best friend who knew. So as time went on, I started having more and more nightmares. I would wake up just in a panic. They were always very graphic nightmares, and just my anxiety got worse throughout the day. I got to the point where I couldn't even go to the grocery store without having a panic attack. Being in public was really, really hard for me. Um, and I would get like my blood pressure would get so high that I just like would black out and just start bawling. And we actually had just gotten, this is a really cool story. We had just gotten a black lab. And so my friends and family were like, what if you get him trained to be a service dog? So he did. He qualified. He had the personality and the temperament. It took about a year, but he went with me everywhere I went. And so now I've had him for 5 years. So I still take him sometimes, but my anxiety is so much better. My PTSD is so much better that I don't need him every minute of every day. He still alerts for me. He still does pressure therapy. Um, I did, back in the past, I did some EMDR, kind of eye movement stuff. What is it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've heard of that too.
Unleashed. So yeah, it helps some, but I did a lot of work on my dreams too with the therapist because that was the most frightening part. So I would say that PTSD is doing much, much better. I have some victory over that. But sometimes when the bipolar gets really bad, it's like my body is like too much, I can't. And so some of the PTSD stuff will kind of sneak back in if I'm already in a rough place. But it's been a while. I haven't been having as many issues with anxiety, and I've been doing some really cool things in public and volunteering and things like that that I would have never been able to do before. Um, but yeah, does that
Yeah,
kind of
that's
answer your question
awesome.
about what PTSD looks like for?
Yeah, because I like to tell people that come on, it's your story, and I'm very fortunate that I don't battle some of the same battles as some people do. So I
Yeah.
really, again, appreciate you being able to tell us kind of what this has looked like for you and just open up. On the service dog, that's awesome. Like
The best.
I'm curious about that. So I know you had said was a family member had the dog?
We actually got him in a neighboring state. There was a program in the prison. I don't know if it's still going since COVID, but we got him 2018. So he was trained by the inmates. So he was actually in a prison for 3 months. And so we just thought, like, what a good family dog. This was before my anxiety kind of was at its worst. It was not great, but not terrible. And so we had a previous dog pass away, and we're like, I think it's about time. Let's go up to this prison. He's done 3 months of training with the inmate, and we were just thinking, like, you go to the pound and it's the saddest thing ever, but you really don't know much about the dog. And it's so this one, I was like, they've had him for 3 months. They can tell temperament, and is he going to be okay with kids, things like that. So we just wanted him just to replace the dog that we had had in the past. But within probably about the first 6 months of having him, I started getting worse and worse. So he had additional training and boarding, and at a place that specializes in dogs for service work. So he was trained. It took about 18 months. We had to do a whole bunch of public access training, things you don't think of, like elevators, escalators, shopping carts smashing together, how to get under the chair so that when we're out in public, his tail's not sticking out. Um, the
Sure.
first the first restaurant we went to, he was under my chair and the waitress dropped the plate right in front of him and he didn't touch it. And so it's just things
Wow.
like they have to know so much more than you would think. And, kids will come up and, can I pet your dog? And the mom's be like, it's a working dog. Um, Even my youngest, if you ask him, what kind of dog do you have? Like thinking breed, he'll say, a service dog. So grown up with it and just kind of thinks of it as normal. And even when he's having a rough day, he'll ask the dog to come do pressure for him because it's like a weighted blanket, like a living weighted blanket. It's amazing. So yeah, and
Oh,
he does
yeah, that's
great.
I guess I, never thought of that before.
And he alerts for panic attacks. He does it by monitoring my breathing. So if my
What?
breathing rate
I
is
okay,
this,
I
and
need a service dog.
yes. Oh my gosh, he's the best. But yeah, he'll alert if things. Yeah, I was doing my taxes the other day, and he alerted. I was like, "Well, it's just." So yeah, that's a little
So,
bit
like, what
about
does
him.
that look like then? Like, because I mean, I suffer from panic disorder. So, like,
Uh,
what type of things does he, I guess, per se, like, alert of, or like, how does that interaction look?
so they wanted him originally to paw or nudge with his nose if there was anxiety, and they came back and were like, I'm so sorry. I don't think your service dog is going to qualify because he won't alert for anxiety. And they have to have a few tasks. And that's what I really needed him for. Well, then we started realizing that he wasn't alerting because when they were trying to train him, they were faking panic attacks. But when I actually was having real panic attacks, he noticed, and he mirrors, like I said, my breathing changes. So he'll look at me and just go and do this huge huff. And it's like, this is what you're doing. Like, and it's enough that nobody in the room notices. So I really appreciate that. But it's enough for me to be like, oh, maybe I do need to step outside, or maybe this is bothering me more than I thought it was.
Oh.
And then he can do pressure while I'm seated in the chair. He can kind of drape himself over my lap, or if I lie down, he will come and put his paws and his body on my chest. It's almost like holding a baby, like all those good hormones
Yeah, but
having.
more
Yeah.
fun. A cute cuddly baby.
Just sleeps through the night.
Right?
But yeah, so he does that. And then he's also good at, like, if we're in the checkout, I can put him right behind me and it'll create a barrier. I cannot stand it when I'm anxious, when people like push their cart right up and put like all their groceries on top of mine, and like
Oh my gosh, I
people don't
know.
understand
I'm
about
glad I'm
personal
not the only person who feels that way.
not, but he can lie down behind me and stay in line so that I can get all my groceries up and still have space. So he has a few other tasks too, but those are his main ones.
Huh. That's pretty cool. I guess, like, I've heard of, I mean, I guess it's the same thing as like the emotional support animals, but I guess I never knew like what actual, like, not like dangers, but what they're able to really detect for you. I mean, like you just
Yeah.
said, he'll notice when your breathing is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously, we must give off a smell or something when
Mm-hmm.
there's anxiety or panic that they are able to recognize as well. That's just so incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. I'm very blessed to have him.
And what kind of dog is he?
He's a black lab mix, maybe a little border collie, something like that. He's on my social media,
So
so
that's a good
everyone's like,
sized dog, too.
yeah, he's like 60 pounds, so he's perfect.
So that's a good weighted blanket.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot. And that's probably more helpful than you've noticed. Even like you've said, you got him when you were like really battling with anxiety. And like now, if you're not like battling as much, you probably didn't realize like how helpful he was during it until you were like, wow, like
Yeah.
I would love a dog to just like lay on me and be like, okay, we need to calm down. Like, get it together.
Exactly.
Because, sometimes it's like hard. Like, I don't know if you've ever had this or somebody else listening, but like sometimes like when you experience anxiety or your body's getting ready to like go into that panic mode and, before your full blown panic attack, like
Yeah.
something just changes. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether, like you said, it's the breathing, the eye movement, our what is it, like our structure if we're sitting or whatever, like, and I wish somebody was there to alert me of that
Yeah.
before like it shit hit the fan. Like,
Exactly.
see, and I have a black lab as well, so I think she's got some training to do.
Absolutely. They're the
I
best.
think she needs to get on that. I mean, and she's mixed. She is a black lab mixed with pit bull. So she's
Uh-huh.
very protective. So I
I'll
feel like, it could be, yeah, it could be if she wanted to do it, I think she could. Because she already thinks that, like, she owns the house, she's the guard. And, but I'm like, okay, but like, if you see a look in my eye, like, come and just lay on top of me. Like, like, let's figure it out. Help me out here.
I will totally help you. I can help you teach her pressure. We can work on that together.
Yes, yes, that would be great. Like, I never even thought about that because, like, they came out with like weighted blankets eventually a couple years ago, and it's just like, no, nothing would beat that dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're sitting there with like an 80-pound blanket on you and you're sweating. Like, I'd rather have the 60-pound dog, like, just hanging out. At least we're having a good time. Definitely, that is something super, super cool. And would you say, like, that I guess if your, like, kids started showing, like, any anxiety, that the dog's been able to, like, gravitate towards them too? Like, or
Yeah,
are you his person? Like, he looks for you. Does that make sense? I don't know.
he does. He takes his commands from me. So when my youngest will be like, "Hey, you wanna go in the car?" He comes straight to me and looks at me like, "Is this a legit offer? Like, can I really?"
Oh.
And so if I say no, then he's just sad, but if I say yes,
Oh.
like, he'll just run around in circles. But I will tell him pressure and then point to which kid. And I mean, why not use them for everybody, you know? Dogs are
Right?
great. So he does not
Yeah.
alert anybody but me, if that makes sense. I'm the only one he alerts for, but he will carry out the command if I tell him to do pressure on another family member.
Wow. Yeah, that's
So,
incredible.
yeah.
That's a really great value to have. Like, I'm sure that's a lot of value to your family, and especially you, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I will let you know if I get my dog trained, but I don't think she's that
Yes, please
smart.
do. Very smart.
Yeah, she likes naps and snacks too much, so I don't think she'd really like, I'm like, I don't know about this. I do know, like, jumping back into it a little bit, that your book does talk about like pregnancy with mental illness, right?
Mhm. Yes.
So what does that look like? Because I know a lot of mothers that have struggled, obviously, with postpartum and
Mm.
add the after effects, and a lot of women who have gone into a pregnancy with mental health issues and just what that's looked like as well.
Sure. So I shared just a little bit in the book about it. It was very frightening because I had a medication. I don't know. We had a system going, and then once I became pregnant, lithium can be toxic to the baby's heart and cause heart defects. So it's like instantly that second you have to stop. So I actually figured out I was pregnant a couple of days early, so I was able to stop it. But then it's like, where do we go from here? So, what are safe options during pregnancy? And the doctor wanted to switch from before I was on like two or three different medicines, kind of all working in combination. But with during pregnancy, they wanted to maintain just one monotherapy. For the least, one plus one may not equal two, that kind of deal. So, to make sure that we had the fewest factors and the lowest risk. So it meant that my pregnancy was really hard because I was not medicated as well as I needed to be, but I was kind of taking one for the team for the baby. And then I was worried about anytime I was with new medical personnel, I was like, they're going to think I'm crazy. Like, they're just going to look at my med list and think I'm a bad mom. And that didn't end up being the case at all. The hospital was amazing. The delivery was fine. One of the nurses, the baby had just been taken, kind of, they're on your chest at first and they put them under the light and look them over real good. And I asked the nurse, I was like, can you please listen to his heart really well? I was on lithium when I was first pregnant. And she said, I'm good at hearing heart murmurs. Your baby does not have anything wrong with his heart. And she was like, and then she pointed down to her own belly, and turns out she was pregnant. And she was like, I have depression too. And it's one of those things we have to decide, what do we do to take care of our baby and to take care of ourselves. So it ended up being a really sweet moment. And I thought it was sweet that she opened up and shared with me a little bit. And so then, like I said, I ended up not being able to breastfeed. I also started grad school with a 5-week-old, which I do not recommend to
Oh,
anybody.
fun.
I'd gotten in the
You like a
program,
challenge.
right? So I thought that it was now or never because it was a really hard program to get into. So I was like, if I'm going to do it, I need to do this. So, yeah, there were some extra stressors in there too, but that was kind of how my pregnancy went. Um, Trying just to do the best I could, take the least amount
Yeah.
possible, still function.
And was that the way it was with all three of your pregnancies?
Not at all. Um, I didn't have I wasn't on any medications with either of those. I didn't know. It was right after a year or two after my second kid that everything. So before that, I did not know that I had bipolar. and I wasn't on medication for it. There were signs starting to come, but it sometimes goes misdiagnosed for a while because the ups are great, but the downs are the hard one. So a lot of people just go to the doctor complaining of the depression, and then the upside gets missed. So that's what happened to me. I started having manic episodes about 19, and then I think I was 21 when I got diagnosed with bipolar. So not a super long time, but long enough that there was more going on than we knew.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know that I had a guest on a couple of weeks ago that spoke about like how hard it is to navigate with somebody like, is it bipolar? Could it be BPD? So it's really being like self-aware, like you said, and noticing not just the downs, but sometimes the high highs.
Right.
Always, I guess, talk about just being self-aware is the biggest thing. I mean, it's incredibly scary, but I mean, if we're not gonna advocate for ourselves and give ourselves grace and pay attention to ourselves, it's hard to almost expect anyone else to do that.
Yes. Yeah. And just learning what some of the symptoms are, I'm teaching my middle son kind of just what to look for because I didn't know what to look for, but things like impending doom or racing thoughts, like we don't go into the world knowing what that stuff is, so we need to
Right?
know what the symptoms are so that we can advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like really just wrapping it up, I mean, what advice would you give to anyone right now that is you're an advocate? So what is your take that you would give to somebody in the mental health community that is struggling right now?
I guess I kind of would have two pieces of advice. So, to the person who is struggling, I would say that there is always hope. It may not feel like it, it may feel like the world is going to end and in like an impending doom sense, or that anxiety is so bad you can't get out of the bed. Whatever symptom it may be, there is hope. There's always hope, even when it doesn't feel like it. And I say that, the saying, what goes up must come down. Well, the same is true with bipolar. What goes down must come up. That's the nature of it. So I would say hold on to hope. And then if you are someone who is worried about a loved one, I would say ask the hard question. Ask, are you suicidal? And if they're not, then it won't be. It'll just be like, no, no, it's not that bad. But if they are, sometimes people are just waiting for someone to care and to ask and to help and say, if you are, I'm here for you. Can we call the doctor together? Can I go with you to the psychiatric hospital? If people have a knee replaced, they bring them a casserole, but we need to work, I feel, in general, we need to work on supporting people who have mental illness. So whatever you can do. I took one of my friend's sons coloring books and those little pop-it things to the psych hospital with some colored pencils. Anything we can do to just kind of normalize that this is how it may be, and that's okay. But I do care enough to ask the hard questions. So, are you having any dark thoughts? Are you having any suicidal thoughts? Please don't be afraid to ask that.
I could not agree with you more. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story, even if it was just a glimpse of how it was or what it was for you. It's valuable, and I appreciate you sharing it. And it needs to be heard. And I'm sure someone listening has resonated with it. And for anybody else listening who wants to talk to you or learn more about you and find your book, where can they connect with you?
Sure. Probably the best thing is on Instagram. It's Chasing Normal, Finding Hope. It's a big watercolor brain on the front of the book. So it's also on Amazon. So it's on paperback or ebook, Kindle kind of deal. So it's on all of those platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. You bring a ton of value to this community, and I can't say it enough. It's a story that needs to be heard, and I'm so glad that you decided to share it and tell it with us today.
It was an honor. Thank you so much for having me on, Jess.
Thank you. And for everybody else that knows how this goes, we're not going to push that panic button. We're going to figure it out. Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.